I realize that Ben McAdoo and Jerry Reese sucked. I realize that they needed to be shown the door after 2017. Jerry Reese, years of questionable moves in free agency, mediocre to subpar drafting, his time had long since come and gone. And finally, he was shown the door. Ben McAdoo proved himself to be a bit of a clown, lost the locker room, terribly mismanaged the whole quarterback situation in 2017, benching Eli to then, he had to go. Understandably. And with where the Giants were at is kind of an awkward place. You're in a major market like New York. You don't really want to be in a rebuild mode. But the truth of the matter is you are in a rebuild mode. So you either A, embrace that, bite the bullet for a period of time, and maybe come out much better on the other side, or you stubbornly dig in your heels and think that you've got a team that's much better than it actually is, and you ultimately waste a season. That's what the New York Giants did in 2018. It was a lost, wasted year to the surprise, I think, of very few. Now, sure, you might have thought the hiring of Dave Gettleman as general manager, the hiring of Pat Shurmur to be their head coach, the trading for Alec Ogletree, the signing of Nate Solder was going to make a difference. It fucking didn't. In the grand scheme of things, it really didn't. Because Dave Gettleman and Pat Shurmur, I'm sure combined, bought into the notion that they could get more out of Eli Manning in 2018. They made the easy decision, the lazy decision, and the wrong decision to go with Eli as their guy, thinking, hey, we put some help and talent around him, we can have another run of it. No, the hell you can't. Like, what the hell, NFL, have you been watching the past few years to think that Eli was anything other than washed? And even if you wanted to point to, like, 2016, it's not like he was super great then. 2017, he stunk. It's part of the reason why McAdoo benched him. Like, the one parting gift that Ben McAdoo could have given you was the point of no return for Eli Manning as your starting quarterback, and Dave Gettleman and Pat Shurmur dug in their damn heels like dummies. And you can say, well, it's not easy to move on from the guy. I don't disagree with that. But that's what you're in that position to do, is to make difficult decisions. And sticking with Eli for another year, stubbornly believing that it was going to be better than it actually ended up being, to the surprise of very few, speaks to stubbornness and poor decision-making, period. Now, some of you are going to point to the offense and say, well, they were top 10 in the league in passing yards a game. They were 17th in total yards, so they weren't that bad. Sure, the drafting of Saquon Barkley, number 2 overall, he was an absolute stud, 2,000-plus all-purpose yards, 5 yards a carry, 15 combined touchdowns. Odell Beckham Jr. missed a few games due to injury, but 77 catches for 1,052 yards, 6 touchdowns. He had a pretty good season, and then you're going to hear the defenders of Eli. I can't believe they still exist. Whoa, why are you shitting on Eli? Not just his problem. It was an offensive line. It was this and it was that. He completed 66% of his passes. He threw for almost 4,300 passing yards. He only had 11 interceptions and all this other statistical garbage. Here's one thing we're going to have to be careful of in the next few years. We cannot use the standards of 10, 15, 20 years ago to validate a certain level of quarterback performance. It just can't happen. 15, 20 years ago, Eli Manning completing 2/3 of his passes and throwing for almost 4,300 yards might make him an MVP candidate. In today's game, it makes him a mediocre to bad, washed-up quarterback. Because when you actually bother to watch the Giants, you saw an Eli consistently in check-down mode, still all these years later struggling to get past his primary read. And as much as the narrative was out there, because the media loves to protect quarterbacks whenever possible, unless there's certain guys that they love to shit on, they don't love to shit on Eli, they love to defend him. It's always blame the offensive line, blame the offensive line, blame the offensive line. And yes, the offensive line was not good, but damn it all, stop blaming the offensive line exclusively for the problems with Eli Manning and the Giants. A lot of those sacks that Eli Manning took were Eli Manning sacks because of his piss-poor pocket presence even after all these years and flat out just being chicken shit in the pocket, the first little whiff of pressure, and he voluntarily goes down. I can't remember the last time I saw a guy play so scared in the pocket. I can't. What, Tony Eason in the 85 season in Super Bowl 20 against the Bears? That's how terrified Eli Manning played over the course of the entire season. The same shit he did in 2017, but Dave Gettleman and Pat Shurmur thought he was worth giving another run on the rodeo for 2018, you morons. That's why the Giants are picking 6th overall in the draft this year. Combined with the defense that stunk. 20th against the run, 23rd against the pass, 24 total yards. I mean, they had a mediocre to bad offense, inconsistent, and a defense that got shredded in a lot of ways. It's not surprising when you looked at the early portion of their schedule, which was a little stacked, a little tough, that this team came out of the gate with a 1-7 start. I alluded to it before the season started that one reason I didn't buy into the Giants as a possible playoff team was the fact that their early season schedule shook up to be a 2-6 or 1-7 start. And by that point in time, even if they got together and won a few games in a row, it was over. And that's exactly what happened. So all you did with 2018, when the most valuable, precious commodity we all have on this planet is time, is you wasted time. You wasted an entire season with an Eli Manning vanity project, and you're picking 6th overall as a result. Good job, Dave Gettleman. Now, if you look at Dave Gettleman, outside of the stupidity of the stubbornness and wanting to stick with Eli Manning, his first draft in New York wasn't bad. Now, there's still going to be debate for years about whether Saquon Barkley should have been the pick at number 2 overall, or that they should have taken a quarterback there. Here's what we do know, though. If you're going to ignore the quarterback at number 2, then your number 2 overall pick better be a stud. And Saquon was every bit as advertised, and maybe then some. Like I said, 15 total touchdowns, 2,000 plus all-purpose yards, 5 yards a carry. You saw progression and growth from him at Penn State to his rookie season in New York, and I'm excited to see the potential, the possibility of what he could be going forward. So when you talk about number 2 overall pick statistically, he certainly measured up. Willer Hernandez, who they took early in round 2, was a bit of a presence on the interior of that line. He was really good as a rookie. He's going to be great down the road. And if this draft class of the Giants can get guys like Lorenzo Carter, B.J. Hill, maybe R.J. McIntosh, 1 or 2 of those guys to contribute on a somewhat consistent basis, then this will have been a good initial offering for Dave Gettleman running the Giants draft room. Not bad. The problem ultimately is you don't have that quarterback on your roster. And let me again emphasize, you don't have that quarterback on your roster, specifically and up to and including Eli Manning. So until you resolve that, none of this other shit really matters. The Giants have about $27 million or so of cap space heading into this offseason. Some of the potential cap casualties you could have, you look at Olivier Vernon, Janoris Jenkins, Jonathan Stewart, I think is obvious. And there's a very good chance that Eli Manning could potentially be a casualty of the cap. And if not, to me, Dave Gettleman and Pat Shurmur should be both committed to the insane asylum. Because if you think Eli Manning is worth another season as your starter in 2019, you're insane! Insane! No. Cut him, move on, and get on with it. It's that obvious. When you look at their needs, the number 1 need is to find that young quarterback. So when you look at the Giants, of course, they're now in a position because they passed on taking a quarterback at number 2 overall last year in a much better quarterback class to where they might have the ability to take a quarterback as part of a lesser quarterback class in 2019. Leave that to the Giants. And I still do wonder if this team is going to be committed on finding a guy and wanting to take a quarterback at 6 overall. They could. They may have learned their lesson, but they very well may not have. Because they are already stubbornly going to dig in their heels with Eli last year. What makes you think they wouldn't do it here in 2019? Now, they need some help still in that offensive line. The Eric Flowers experience, mercifully, is finally over for this team, but Nate Solder's stuck as well. So they need an offensive lineman, specifically at the tackle position, if not 2 of them, to protect Eli if they bring him back, or another young quarterback that they groom to be that long-term answer. I still feel like they could use a little more help at wide receiver outside Odell Beckham Jr., maybe a little bit more of a physical presence defensively. They could use some pressure off of the edge. They could use some depth in that secondary. But the reality is, for the New York Giants, the number 1 goal of the program, in this offseason is to find that young, long-term answer at the quarterback position. You find that, And the Giants will reap the benefit of the fruits of that decision making for years to come. If they don't, 2019 will be yet another season of disappointment where they have kicked the can down the road for what they're eventually going to have to do any damn ways.